another.
Welcome in, everybody. This is FST, Fantasy Sports Today. My name's Matt Striker, joined as always, thank you, Heavenly Father, by the one and only Joe Pisapia. He's the author of the Fantasy Black Book. And the reason I say that is because, Joe, you have single-handedly changed the way people win their leagues, win their bets, play DFS. So all of that, a big tip of the cap. That's on the slate today. If you're new to this show or you just lapsed, at SportsGrid TV. Those are our social media handles. Make sure you're following along. A lot to talk about today. Folks, I don't care what your record is as a fantasy manager. I don't care if you're above or underwater as a wagerer. We've got you here today. There is time for profit. Speaking of profit, Joe, my man, welcome in. What do you see for this week?
No, I see some great NFL matchups, and one in particular where Patrick Mahomes is an underdog, and whenever Patrick Mahomes is an underdog, that's when you take the college fund and you put it all on Patrick Mahomes. He's 12-1-1 in his career as an underdog. It doesn't happen very often, but when it does, Patrick Mahomes takes it personally. Just look at the playoffs from last year and the Super Bowl. Yeah, good times. And now he and the Kansas City Chiefs, maybe playing one of their best games of the season, arguably, too, are going to head into Buffalo to play the Buffalo Bills, a team that typically they beat up on, who've got some injuries. Amari Cooper's hurt, but he's going to play. And Dalton Kincaid is out. Keon Coleman's unavailable. So I don't get it, but I like it. I will tell you that much. But there's a lot to like this week, too. We've also got the Ravens and Steelers in a huge matchup. Basically, we've got playoff football today in Week 11, and that's great.
Yeah.
And we've also got some returns. Last week, we got Christian McCaffrey back. This week, we get Nico Collins back, which is terrific. So we're starting to get some of those big fantasy pieces returning to lineups, which is absolutely huge. But maybe no piece has been bigger this year than Saquon Barkley, the acquisition from the Philadelphia Eagles, the chip on his shoulder. Well, he went for 146 and 2 touchdowns. He hit the over, folks, which was pretty high. It was already in the 90s on Thursday Night Football. And he and Jalen Hurts really took it to the Washington Commanders, just outclassed them. You look at what he's done so far over 10 games, too, over 1,000 yards rushing, 1137. 8 touchdowns on the season. Barkley's been absolutely tremendous. And it looks like now they're clear sailing for this division because the Washington Commanders were the one piece standing in their way. They've beaten them. They've shown that from a roster perspective, they are just far more talented right now. So it'll be interesting in the years to come how the Commanders start to really, load up and start to attack the Philadelphia Eagles and maybe make this a little bit more fair of a fight. Not quite the Jake Paul, Mike Tyson kind of, fight, something a little bit more fair. But the Cowboys don't look like much of a contender nowadays with Cooper Rush, and certainly the New York Giants, at least they're on a bye. So I don't think they can lose this week. But there's more to get to as well. It's not just Saquon Barkley. Again, those Chiefs are heading into Buffalo. Very exciting time here. Travis Kelce starting to play better. DeAndre Hopkins starting to figure out the offense. Isaiah Pacheco was designated to return, but is not going to return quite yet, which is what we saw with Nico Collins. So it's going to take another week, maybe 2, before we start to see Isaiah Pacheco, which means if you have Kareem Hunt, you got to start thinking about, all right, trade deadlines are looming in a lot of leagues this week. Do I want to sell on Kareem Hunt? And for how cheap do I want to get rid of him? I say, unless you're getting a pretty fair offer, to just keep him for the depth, because I don't think Kareem Hunt is going to disappear completely in this backfield, but that's a big piece to look at. And then the Bears went ahead and made a move. Offensive coordinator Shane Waldron is gone. Matt Striker, do you think that this is the cure-all for the ills of the Chicago Bears in this offense that was looking good coming out of London? 2 straight good weeks. They hit the bye. They come back, and it's been awful ever since. So is this shakeup going to shake things up for the offense, in your opinion?
This is curious to me because at the end of the day, the responsibility doesn't necessarily fall on the offensive coordinator. If something's going wrong, you get the head coach or the rest of the team come together and they say, hey, do it this way. So this is curious to me. It could be a warning shot fired. I agree. But at the same time, it's interesting because why is he the sacrificial lamb? Is there's got to be something more, something internal that perhaps, we don't know about. But from a wagering perspective, you and I talk about this all the time. Anytime there's a change in administration, I mean, if it's at the top or at a coordinator, always like to get on those teams. I always like to see if the numbers can lend themselves into some kind of, rah-rah behind a team. In baseball, we talk about how the Phillies were that team. So let's see maybe here if something can happen here with the Bears offense, Joe.
Yeah, well, look, what's happened with the Bears offense is no passing touchdowns for Caleb Williams. So whatever they're doing with the offense isn't working. Whatever development in terms of getting this guy to get rid of the ball quicker. I mean, he holds the ball way too long, tries to extend plays, which is a great thing sometimes, but not all the time. It's to the detriment of the offense itself. So was it the inability to simplify things? Was it the inability to give the guy what – I mean, I don't know what it was at the end of the day, but you've given him enough weapons with DJ Moore and Rome Odunze and Keenan Allen. Do you start running the football more with DeAndre Swift and maybe Roshan Johnson works more? I don't know. All I know is the last couple of weeks have been absolutely dreadful. The completion percentage also under 50% over that time. That's the problem. You have to move the football. You have to make completions. And Caleb Williams just wasn't doing that. Now, he was going against the Washington Commanders, Arizona Cardinals, and New England Patriots. So some good teams and the Patriots, but not exactly going against the vaulted defenses of the Kansas City Chiefs or the Pittsburgh Steelers or teams like that. Now, this week they get Green Bay in another big in-division matchup where, historically speaking, the Chicago Bears do not fare very well. So it'll be interesting at home to see if they can get something going. But this stretch here is very important for them because they play Green Bay, Minnesota, and Detroit 3 weeks in a row. 2 of those games are in Chicago. Detroit is in Detroit. So, look, I don't want to say it's going to get ugly for the Bears, but it's probably going to get ugly for the Bears. It's a bad situation here. Caleb Williams really has fallen off. Look, here's the thing. If you buy into Caleb Williams and you believe in the talent, this is the time to, in dynasty leagues, pounce because this might be the low point of his career. And there's a good chance there's a coaching change at the end of the year too, which then begs that cycle that we've seen so often, right? Bad teams get high draft picks, right? Because they're bad teams, bad organizations, bad coaching. They get high draft picks. They take franchise quarterbacks. And guess what? They have trouble developing. Why? Because they are bad organizations with bad head coaches that don't do a good job. And then what happens? All of a sudden, they change coordinators, and then another coordinator, and then another head coach. And next thing you know, you've had 4 different coordinators in 4 years and 2 different head coaches. And this is why Justin Fields is where he is at this point in his career, and some other quarterbacks too. So definitely one to think about and see where the direction's going. But it doesn't look like a good one in the next couple of weeks. Maybe make some trades of your Bears assets. Also, back from the dead, Anthony Richardson's back for the Indianapolis Colts. Well, it's kind of surprising, Matt, because you brought in Joe Flacco, and I think at least my justification for that was, hey, you're alive in the playoff race. Maybe you go make a run, right? You go make a run with Anthony Richardson, with Joe Flacco, rather. You see if over the next couple of weeks you can battle. And then a couple of weeks later, now all of a sudden we're back to Richardson. So I know a lot of fantasy managers are very excited about this. He's taking on the New York Jets in New York. This game has 4 outcomes written all over it. We love the rushing equity that he brings. But look, the 7 interceptions, just 4 touchdowns. That's the big problem here, Matt.
I think it's that Richardson's going to wreak havoc, and I'm so glad that we waited here to talk about this game because I just want to turn you loose, just your absolute, I don't want to give it all away, but your feelings, your deep feelings about the New York Jets. Mark, or at any other point, then you think you can go to a back pocket play. It's going to be a fantastic game. It's one I'm looking forward to, but I got to agree with you. It's one I'm not betting on. It's complete stay away for me because of the volatility of the outcomes.
At that time, and look, the one thing you can do is run on the Jets. They've given up 1,340 rushing yards on the season already. So this Jets defense that was supposed to be so great is giving up a ton against the run. Maybe that's the thought process of getting Anthony Richardson back. So we'll see if he booms, but we've got some guys that definitely will in week 11. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with FST.
Together, both Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the 2 big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, it's going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid, Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma
grandma bear who owns the football team probably comes in, gives a little, oh, man, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Quarterly, I missed you hinting your own cheek because I was looking down and did not know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma would do when you go see her on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back into FST Fantasy Sports Today. Matt and Joe with you here, giving you everything you need in order to dominate. And what we were doing during the break, I'm sure people have done it before, is the what would you do if you had $4 million kind of conversation. And I think that's fun, though, because it's winners talk. You know what I mean? And I understand I don't like having fantasy. I almost like reality. I like go out there, do it. Don't spend time dreaming on it. Be here now. But having that positive winners talk, that's the way to really lead it. So let's have positive winners talk. Let's have some fantasy booms here. Let's have some positive wagering and fantasy talk about Jared Goff. Now, if you look at this game, Joe, and I'll have our producers double check, I saw some lines. It's like minus 900 on the Lions here. Like, this is just absolutely ridiculous. So there's got to be ways that we can find to dive in and attack. So let's have some talk here. How do you like Goff in Jacksonville?
Well, it's funny you should mention that minus 900, because there's actually a way you can make money on it. Do you want to hear it, Matt? It's actually kind of fun. It's like,
does it involve a timeshare or a foreign currency?
You'll see, Matt, all you have to do is just, come to this meeting, and next thing you know, everything will be fine. Your whole life will change. No, actually, this is something that I did earlier on my Betting Pro show earlier in the week. If you take the money line Detroit Lions, right, which is obviously, minus 900, not something, minus 950 in a lot of markets, put it with the Chiefs on the money line at plus money, and the Cleveland Browns as well, which is basically a pick'em game, you can get that number to 355. So you're getting 3-1 there on two things that I think are an absolute lock, and one thing I think is very possible. And if you want to take the Lions to cover the spread, that number goes to plus 670. Just saying, if you just change that bet just a little bit. Nice. Last time the Lions had somebody come into their building that was underwhelming, it was the Titans, and I think we remember how that one went. And now you've got Mac Jones coming into town, and I don't know if he's going to be able to move this offense. Tank Bigsby is out for this game, and Jared Goff is playing in the Coors Field of the NFL. Yes, that's true. This is where all the points happen. And Jared Goff, I know, threw 5 picks last time we saw him, and everyone's freaking out about Jared Goff. Jared Goff's not freaking out about Jared Goff. Jared Goff was unmoved, unfazed in the press conference last week, and now he's got a great situation in Jacksonville Jaguars defense that's given up a ton of passing yards this year, and he's right in the thick of it again. He's in a great spot here, and I would be going right back to him in this matchup. It's a terrific matchup for him. I have zero concerns. I understand the last time was not good. I get that, but if you go back to the game against Tennessee, right, the last time he was at home in his own building, it was pretty good. It was a good day for Jared Goff in fantasy. 3 touchdowns there for him. So, look, I just think we're going to be seeing more of the Jared Goff that we saw where he's throwing for 270 yards and just kind of airing it out. And I think from a confidence standpoint, it's something you want to see too. Just kind of get back in the groove a little bit. Normally, you would see this be like a trap game, right? Where a team is doing very well, get a lesser opponent coming in, and maybe they struggle. But Dan Campbell is not that kind of football coach. Dan Campbell is not the foot off the gas kind of coach, ever. So you don't see a lot of trap games with the Lions because the Lions don't know any other way to play. And I think that's very good for the Detroit Lions. So Jared Goff, a boom for this week. Also a guy that I think is going to be a boom coming off of a bye is Nick Chubb. Now, Nick Chubb is in a situation where you saw the carries managed, then you saw Jameis Winston throw picks everywhere. Now, if you're the Cleveland Browns, you got to stay relevant here as long as you can to keep Kevin Stefanski's job, right? He's a good football coach in a terrible situation. You hand the football off here against the New Orleans Saints, and you run and run and run some more. And coming off that bye, there's no reason not to give Nick Chubb 20 carries. And I think this is the plan going into this game.
Right.
So the over for him is 60.5. I think he goes over this into the 70s, maybe even to the 80s today, potentially. I think he's got touchdown equity today. I think he's an interesting cost-effective player in DFS. So look for Nick Chubb to potentially start to remove some of the shackles and limitations that he's had since coming back from this injury. I think it's time. And I think it's out of necessity as well. So look for Nick Chubb to return and maybe the boom running back of this week that people aren't expecting.
All right, I like it. Now let's pivot here to the Pittsburgh Steelers. They have Baltimore, and there's a little wrinkle that we can find to take advantage. Talk us through this one, Joe.
Yeah, look, when you're talking about teams that give up a lot of air yards, a lot of passing yards, receiving yards, it's the Baltimore Ravens and everybody else. And the Pittsburgh Steelers and Ravens, typically one of those games that we were looking was, what's the under? Can we get the under here, please? Because that's normally the slugfest that is the Ravens and the Steelers. I just don't know if that's the game we're going to get here. Russell Wilson playing much better the last 3 games. But just for context, too, the second worst team in the NFL in terms of giving up passing yards is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who we all know that's a great one to go against. Kirk Cousins threw for 500 in one game. 28-35, that's the number they've given up. You want to know who the Ravens are, who are the worst team in the league? Yeah. 31-46, 3,146 yards already, and it's only week 11. That's what they've given up so far in the air. So that means George Pickens, let's go. It's George Pickens' time, and Pickens has been a top 3 wide receiver since the changeover to Russell Wilson. His number today is 6.5. We'll talk about that more in hour 2, but I think it's a great opportunity for him to go over this. I think he goes over 100 today against the Ravens. And because Lamar and company are going to continue to push the football, you know offensively they're going to do their job. Even if the Pittsburgh Steelers defense is very good and we know it to be, it's still Lamar Jackson, it's still Derrick Henry, it's still the Ravens. So I think this is not your grandfather's or even father's Ravens-Steelers game that we're going to see today. It might be a little bit of a different look and maybe more entertaining too. And last but not least, Cedric Tillman, going back to that Browns game too. The one thing about the Saints is they give up some big plays, and Cedric Tillman is going to be in a situation here in this dome off the bye. Again, some extra work in, some extra rest in. It's a good matchup. Marshawn Lattimore is not there anymore either. So that number 1 corner that they used to have is gone. So I think the Browns are in a really good spot here. We love the coach bounce, right? When a coach gets fired, we go right to that team and bet them, unless it's the Jets, in which case we don't, in which case we were also right on that. But typically that's something on this show we have done year in and year out and had great success. But now we're past that bounce. Now we're into reality again. And the reality is the Saints are just not a good football team that have a ton of injuries. So I think Tillman feasts. I think that Nick Chubb feasts. Jameis Winston, is always going to be imperfect in many ways. But just because last time we saw him, he threw a ton of picks and was terrible doesn't mean he can't go out there today and be better and still throw a couple picks and get a W. And I think that's what we're going to see here against New Orleans. So lots of good opportunities here. But again, keep an eye on that Steeler situation because Russell Wilson playing much better. The Ravens defense, I mean, you saw what Joe Burrow did to them just last week. An incredible performance by Burrow and Chase. So not everyone's going to boom in week 11. Some guys are on the downside. We'll tell you who.
Together, both Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the 2 big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, it's going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid, Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
grandma bear who owns the football team probably comes in, gives a little, oh, man, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Quarterly, I missed you pinching your own cheek as I was looking down and did not know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma would do when you goes here on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the game starts so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Welcome back into FST Fantasy Sports today, where even the count-in is fun. We're having a great time here. We hope you are as well. I don't care what your record is. I don't care if you're up or down when you're wagering. This is the spot. It can all turn around on one play, one day, one game. That's how we got to think about it. I'm Matt Striker. He's Joe Pisapia. Of course, we have Cool Hand Luke and TD Jake behind the glass making this machine go. We just did Fantasy Booms. Go check it out. We talked about the games. We talked about the scenarios. Now we got to go to the busts. We got to stay away from these things. But, Joe, I love the way you explain it week in and week out, because within the busts, you give us little nuggets that we can take with us to boom. So let's get going here. Fantasy busts. What's going to happen here?
Well, the question is, are they little nuggets or are they saucy nugs? Because I see the saucy nugs on TV being advertised, which makes me a little uncomfortable. I'm not going to lie. The saucy nug seems like a lot. Well, because, you get the chicken nugget, right? And the point of the chicken, you dip in the chicken nugget, right? You do that. And they're taking the dipping out of it. But the problem is, once the nugget's saucy, I'm eating it with a fork, and then that's like on Seinfeld when they're eating the candy bars with forks and knives. It's a whole thing. It makes me very uncomfortable, It's a lot to take in. Anyway, I was killing the Ravens when last I was here. So now I'm going to say something nice about the Ravens, right? The Ravens defense certainly has struggled against the pass, but they have been very good against the run this year. They've given up the second fewest rushing yards as a team, just 730. The only team that's been better than them has been actually the Minnesota Vikings at 711. Also, when you look at this matchup too, it's just horrible for Najee Harris. It's just really a bad situation. The Baltimore rush defense has allowed the fourth fewest yards per game, the ninth lowest explosive run rate, and the eighth lowest missed tackle rate. So there's a lot of numbers that just don't portend well. Plus, the way you attack the Ravens is very clear. It's through the air. So maybe even Pat Freiermuth has himself a streamer game today. Pickens is going to be good. So Mike Williams gets a touchdown. I don't know if he's going to get a ton of volume in this game. I don't think it's something you can really lean into in fantasy, just because last week he did catch a touchdown. That was the one ball he did catch. But I think Pickens, Freiermuth, maybe even Jaylen Warren working too. But it's just a bad matchup for Najee Harris. Now, I'm not saying you can't start him. You just have to understand that if you have to start him this week, you probably need a little extra boom in your flex spot. Like, you're just going to have somebody who's going to give you a little bit more points because Najee could be limited in terms of what he might be able to give you. So just keep that in mind. Stay away from him in this game. It's a terrible matchup, and we see it time and time again where guys going up against Baltimore Ravens rush defense, it just stops. So, and I don't know how much are going to get him in the passing game considering Jaylen Warren's return. So that is the difficult thing here with starting him. Can you start him? Yes. Do I want to start him? I'd rather look elsewhere if I had some options.
All right, and this next one here might light up the remember message boards? I was about to show my agent say message boards. Might light up social media. And Joe loves it when people come at him on social media. At SportsGrid, at SportsGrid TV, at Joe Pisapia 17. Get involved in the conversation. JSN is at San Francisco. And again, I can just hear the Seahawk Nation coming at you right now. But you say that this is in line for a bust. Why?
Well, it is. And we could talk about it more over AOL Instant Messenger later, too. Those are fun days. Look at that. I wonder what Matt Striker's AIM.
No, you don't.
Screen
you don't want to know. No, you don't.
That's what
I was much younger and into different things. No, sir.
Whoa. Younger and into different things. Now I really want to know what it is. And I think, if anything, that's the social media thread we need. What was Matt Striker's AOL Instant Messenger name? That's the one. But again, not a really good situation here for Jackson Smith and Jigba. Against the type of coverage the 49ers are going to throw at him, it's going to be really tough. The slot receivers have not had a good time. The 49ers have given up the 11th fewest fantasy points per game, the 7th fewest lower passer rating against targeted slot wide receivers. And on top of all that, DK Metcalf is returning. So that's a recipe for disaster. JSN has talent. JSN has the ability to do what he did last time we saw him against the Rams, which is catch 7 out of 13 targets for 180 and 2 touchdowns. Again, I can't say to sit him, but what I can say is you have to go back and look at some of these other games he's had, like the game against the Falcons, right, where he had 3 catches for 9 yards. So his range of outcomes is huge. He has been a proverbial boom or bust player. He's had 2 games over 100 receiving yards this year, and he's only gone on over 50 3 other times, and it's week 11. So that is really tricky. The matchup against San Fran is not great. I'd be looking to start the Quentin Johnsons of the world, who have far more touchdown equity against Cincinnati Bengals today, or Ladd McConkey, I think, is a safer start than JSN, just to give you context. One more guy, too, Brian Thomas Jr. with Mac Jones. Could be a tough day for him. Jones just, leaves a lot to be desired, and you could see a situation maybe where the starters just aren't playing anymore in the second half or at least fourth quarter of this game if it is a blowout. So BTJ not 100% healthy to begin with. When we return, we're going to take a look at DFS. How can we invest in the booms? Get them all in one lineup. We'll tell you when we get back.
Together, both Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the 2 big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, oh, man, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Fortunately, I missed you pinching your own cheek as I was looking down and did not know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma would do to you when you was here on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets and when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the game starts so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
All right. Welcome back into FST Fantasy Sports today. Matt Striker and Joe Pisapia, where the goal is generational wealth. Why should it be anything else? Why sell yourself short? Let's start to build that. Let's look at some DFS plays. And again, overall, and I know, look, if you're out there and you're not playing DFS, don't tune out mentally, physically. Don't you dare ever do that, because the conversations we have inform the rest of the wagers. There are a lot of times in these segments, as soon as I'm done, I go right to my whatever app I'm using and I start making wagers, because listen to the things Joe's going to have to say and listen to where he starts. So we're building our DFS lineups, and we start at running back. Christian McCaffrey, 9,800. Derrick Henry, 9,400. Let's start the conversation there. And folks, pay attention. We're about to go on a ride. Joe?
Yeah, look, every week we have an approach, too, depending what the pool looks like, the bye weeks, the injuries, the cost of everybody. A couple weeks ago, it was, hey, you got to pay up for running back this week. And this week, you're going to hear me say pay up for quarterback. I just think that's where we are. And you're getting a discount on one or two that are really intriguing today. But it's still more expensive than some of the other quarterback pivots we've had in the past, where, sometimes the Bo Nixes of the world look like good investments at their price, and we take them and things work out well. But in terms of the running backs this week, as you mentioned, Matt, we do have very expensive guys here at the top here. No Saquon Barkley because he played on Thursday, so Christian McCaffrey's at the top with 9,800. Derrick Henry against the Steelers. I expect him to get a lot of work, but it's going to be tough to be prolific against that rush defense. Then you got Breece Hall, who theoretically in this matchup against the Colts should be really good. Theoretically, Breece Hall should have been really good last week. We saw him against the Arizona Cardinals. Guess what? Didn't happen. They didn't give him the ball enough. So I don't know what the hell they're doing. I don't trust the Jets anymore. Well, or ever. But I definitely don't trust them this week. So how are we going to go invest in Breece Hall? I want to. Maybe we have one share in one lineup of that, but I don't know. Instead, I want to pivot to Chase Brown, 6,800, who's been getting a ton of work. Zach Moss got hurt, and Chase Brown's kind of emerged as the guy. And look, he was the more explosive back anyway. So at 6,800, he's a really good value. So that's where we start with trying to pay up at the quarterback position. And we're going to have to find some values at wide receiver too in a second. The other guy is Nick Chubb, who I already talked about. I think is in a good spot here against the New Orleans Saints, a team that is not very good. Despite the fact they got that coach bounce last week and came out with a victory, we've seen it time and time again. This happens in the NFL. Everybody rallies around. It's good feelings with a lesser opponent. You come out with a victory, and then the next week you go back to being a crappy team because that's who you were in the first place, okay? And they still don't have a lot of weapons, and it's going to be a tough game for them to come out with a victory. So Chase Brown at 6,800, Nick Chubb at 6,200. Those are two guys in particular that I think have some really good return on investment potential. They have touchdown equity too. That's kind of what we're searching for here is the touchdown equity, because after that you have to go down to guys like Najee Harris. We already talked about that matchup. It's not good. We haven't talked about Estime yet, but again, we just don't know what that workload is going to be. And then the guys, when you fall off after that, it's just not a lot of upside or touchdown equity. So the sweet spot to me, Chase Brown, Nick Chubb, and then we move on to wide receiver.
All right. See, the guy says, it's quarterback. I've got it for quarterback. And then he says, let's move on to wide receiver. So that's called a tease, folks. And, and I got to take a step back.
One thing at a time.
That's why Joe he's a Lothario. He's a Casanova. He's a ladies' man. He understands the importance of moving the wine in a way that you and I do not. So, yes, let's go to wide receivers as we all await with bated breath about the quarterback talk, because all kidding aside, the wide receiver talk will begin to portend or inform the quarterback talk. We started DeAndre Hopkins, 6,700. Man, oh man, what a difference 3 weeks makes. Then there's Cedric Tillman on the list, Jamison Williams, and on we go. Joe, take it away, wide receivers.
Yeah, I think against Buffalo here, I really like Travis Kelce this week. You have a lot of injuries at tight end this week and buys, so it is a tough week. No Kate Otten on the slate this week too, who's been tremendous in terms of volume and return. So you're going to have to pay up for some guys here in the Kansas City Chiefs offense, and I think DeAndre Hopkins is one that I want to. I think he looks like he's figured it out. He had his touchdown with Patrick Mahomes. He did his little Remember the Titans dance, and I think he's going to dance again in Buffalo, to tell you the truth. Cedric Tillman, we mentioned him in the boom segment. A good situation. The Saints blow a lot of coverages, and Marshawn Lattimore is gone. So why not go against Cedric Tillman going against lesser corners? Yes, please. Jamison Williams, another boomer bust guy. So this is more of a, I think, less of a cash game play, more of a tournament play, but at 6,300, a really good investment. And then at 63, also Ladd McConkey against the Cincinnati Bengals. And at just 6,000, Quentin Johnston, who continues to show that he is a guy that can take advantage of good matchups. And Justin Herbert has a great matchup here in a game against the Cincinnati Bengals defense that is just dreadful against the pass this year. Just absolutely terrible. You know, Jesse Bates left. They lost a lot of guys in that secondary, and they never replaced them. the guys that they drafted haven't really come to fruition. The free agency really hasn't gone their way. Cincinnati, kind of patches. It's like when you're trying to, cover a leak at something, right? Like you're trying to put your hand on it and then another leak pops up. That's the Cincinnati Bengals every year. First is the offensive line, and we try to hold that, right? We try to hold that in place. And then what happens is, oh, no, we've got that in place. And then all of a sudden this starts leaking over here. Oh, it's a secondary. We got to plug this over here. That is what they are. And as an organization, until they figure out a better way to do things, this is why they're on the outside looking in. And this is why Joe Burrow's right. They're not a playoff team when he says this. And he knows. So I don't think Joe Burrow's trying to get out of town, but it's a tough situation for them. So look for QJ, look for Ladd McConkey today. I love that stack with Herbert. If you want to do that and then pivot in another way and get away from maybe some of the other chalkier games on the slate, that's cool. That's definitely a way to do it. Again, Herbert, I would go Chase and then maybe Quentin Johnson or McConkey on the other side, or maybe all three of them as your wide receivers. You could pay up for Burrow, or you could just pay down for Herbert, but those are all ways to get involved in a game that might be sneakier in terms of fantasy points than people realize today.
Yeah, no, and you can imagine in the Cincinnati game against the Chargers, a lot of back and forth here. You mentioned Joe Burrow, so now it is time for the quarterbacks. Burrow's priced at $8,500. He's smack dab in the middle of some other quarterbacks. So, Joe, this is it. This is the setup. This is how we're going to make our cake today. Take it away, quarterbacks DFS.
Yeah, look, Lamar's very expensive at $9K, but we all know the rushing equity, big game, big moment for him where, he could win another MVP. If he wins this game today, he really is in the driver's seat for that, because now you've kind of put the Pittsburgh Steelers in their place. You're not worried about the Bengals, and the Browns are the Browns. So this is kind of like that win, and the 1 seed is still in your command potentially as you get towards the end of the season. I know you're still chasing the Chiefs. You're a couple games behind them, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. But most importantly, you kind of stamp this division as Baltimore's division today. This is the game. This is the moment. So can he do it on the road? We'll see. Josh Allen, the good thing about his situation is I mentioned all the injuries, which means a lot more Josh Allen probably running the football, a lot of Khalil Shakir. So it becomes a simplified offense. But again, you're also taking away the Keon Coleman's. And if Amari Cooper's not 100%, you're worried about him. No Dalton Kincaid. So does he become limited as the weapons become more limited around him? Do you see more James Cook today? I don't know. It's a bad matchup against the Kansas City Chiefs defense. Purdy at 8,400 is a terrific play against the Seahawks. We had Purdy last week. We love Purdy's over. Guess what? He went over. I would go back to Purdy today. I would go back to Joe Burrow well today. But Jared Goff at 8,300, great situation for him. And then the underdog, underpriced Patrick Mahomes, never a wrong answer. He is at just 7,900. They're right underneath these guys, and I would go going right after him. The tight ends I mentioned, it's getting kind of thin out there. You have Kittle at the top. He's not 100%. We'll talk more about that injury later in hour 2. Travis Kelce at 7,400. Again, if you pay down at running back and wide receiver, you can do the Mahomes-Kelce combination, and it's a really, I think, profitable combination today. Brock Bowers, you're going to get a lot of volume. The problem is no touchdown equity. That's just not been a thing for the Las Vegas Raiders this year. Hawkinson, intriguing at 6,500, but if I'm going to pivot all the way down, I think Pat Freiermuth at 53 is interesting against the Ravens. Again, we keep coming back to that same thing, that Ravens pass defense. Yeah, Mike Williams, definitely, absolutely George Pickens. Again, one of my favorite guys to be playing this week. If you want to pair him and Russell Wilson, that's also a really good pairing. There's a lot of good ones out there today on this Sunday slate. But Freiermuth also an intriguing option, too, if you want to get a piece of that game, but you want to go somewhere else. I think Freiermuth is very much in play, and again, helps you kind of move up a tier at wide receiver, get that one big dog in there potentially. Maybe it's a Chase or a Justin Jefferson potentially today. So a really good weekend for DFS. Some chalk out there. I don't think it's wrong, but definitely some other matchups like the Cincinnati Bengals, Chargers, one that I think is a little sneaky, like the Steelers, Russell Wilson, and George Pickens, I think is a little bit sneakier still too. So go out there, play hard, and we come back. We're going to continue FST, making some deals.
Together, both Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the 2 big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid, Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, oh, hey, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Totally, I missed you pinching your own cheek as I was looking down and did not know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma would do when you go see her on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the game starts so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back into FST Fantasy Sports today. Matt Striker and Joe Pisapia with you here, and it's time now for a great segment that we pull out every so often, only when it matters. So this is actually special here. It's time for FST Most Traded. And when we look at this, we really are going to focus in on a lot of these conversations. So, Joe, I see one player's name showing up twice. So maybe we should just start there, and it's CD Lamb. What a polarizing figure on a polarizing team and a polarizing season. I can go on and on, but take it away.
Seems everything is polarized. That's, I think, what you're getting at. And CD Lamb also dealing with a back issue on top of dealing with a quarterback issue, which is the fact that he has to play with Cooper Rush now rest of season. Or maybe Trey Lance. I don't know. Let's see. Against Philly, 10 targets, 6 receptions for 21 whopping yards. 21! There you go. I mean, you're not excited about that, Matt? I guess not. Maybe put the shades on. Maybe we'll see CD Lamb a little better. See what I did there? It's a sun joke about catching touchdowns. Anyway, that wasn't the only crappy thing that we saw in the last week in that building down in Texas. We saw a lot of crap on Friday night as well. But let's talk about the CD Lamb trade value, because that is the thing right now. What can you get for CD Lamb? And believe it or not, over on Fantasy Pros, we have that data of the most executed trades over the last week. And I thought this is always a fun thing to come back and take a look at the most popular deals. And one of the most popular deals, or the most, was swapping CD Lamb for Tyreek Hill. So I wanted to discuss which side of this deal I'd want to be on, because although CD Lamb is a guy theoretically one of the number one picks in fantasy, just like Tyreek Hill, I can't imagine him having any opportunity to live up to that potential over the last couple weeks of the season with Cooper Rush. It just doesn't seem to be where things are going to go. I want to give the Eagles defense credit. They are very good. Some of the matchups that CD Lamb has going forward, Washington, again, secondary's played better, but they're not elite. The Giants, Cincinnati. So there are some good matchups here. Carolina, Tampa. So I think if you look at the matchups, you would say CD Lamb, but instead I'm going to look at the other side and I'm going to say, give me Tyreek Hill and give me Tua. Give me a capable quarterback, because a wide receiver can only be as good as the guy throwing the football. So this is very tight. I think if you're thinking with your schedule fantasy nerd brain, you're looking at the schedule of CD Lamb, but I don't think you're taking into account, well, you have to execute it. And maybe I'm wrong here, but I think Tyreek Hill is a side I'd want to be on. But it is very close, because Hill is also a player that's shown you he's not 100% healthy, and nor has he really lived up to his draft day value either. So these are two guys, arguably the number one overall picks, being swapped for each other. Matt, do you have a side that you want to be on? Do you want to be on the schedule side or the QB side?
I was originally leaning Hill based off of just the fact that Tua is a bit more seasoned. But then when you started running off the schedule, look, even if CeeDee Lamb goes out there in drone mode and kind of just doesn't care and sticks his hand out there, Cooper Rush is still a National Football League quarterback. You, me, and most of the people in our sphere are not. So based off that strength of schedule and what I know about those team secondaries, I would definitely lean on Lamb, just, again, based off of his talent. Even if he's apathetic, I just think, again, you hit him in the chest and he catches a couple of touchdowns. So, yeah.
All right, let's get to the next one here, which is also CeeDee Lamb, but this time for Drake London. Now, I actually know someone personally who pulled this deal off because they messaged me, what do you think of this trade? And I said, well, why don't you try to go get somebody like Drake London instead? And then he went and got Drake London instead. I said, wow, that's good for you. I think they're in a good spot here. So now the problem with Drake London is he does have a bye still coming up. So he plays Denver this week, then he has the bye. But after that, the Chargers, Vikings, but the playoff schedule, Raiders, Giants, Washington Commanders. So if I am a team that knows it's in the playoffs and already kind of locked that up, let's say I'm a 7 or even 8 win team right now, and I somehow had CeeDee Lamb and still got there, this is where I would make this deal for Drake London because I think the playoff schedule is really good for Drake London. I'll take my shots there over Cooper Rush and whatever else deteriorates in Dallas. Don't forget, too, losing begets losing just like winning begets winning.
Yep.
And if things really disintegrate in that Dallas Cowboy locker room, which where it kind of seems it's going, this could get ugly no matter how good the schedule looks on paper. So Drake London for me over CeeDee Lamb rest of season. I think that's another deal I want to be on. I don't think this one is as close as the Tyreek Hill one, honestly, which is kind of surprising. But where do you stand? Do you want Drake London or CeeDee Lamb?
No, I agree with you. No, I agree with you wholeheartedly, considering just the team, the offensive ecosystem, something you write about in the Black Book. It just all points to Drake London for me, even outside of the excuses or the reasons that I gave. Look at that. I went to the word excuses and not reasons. That tells you a lot for CeeDee Lamb ahead of whomever it was just minutes earlier, Tyreek Hill. Short-term memory loss aside, yeah, it'll be Drake London here. This next one, though, I find really interesting because it involves a name that was traded, and that automatically increases that player's value. But it just hasn't seemed to stick. But I'll let you take it from here.
No, it really hasn't. I think everyone was excited when Amari Cooper got acquired by the Buffalo Bills. I know I was. And then it just hasn't happened. And maybe health, obviously, maybe the biggest reason. But here we are, and we're still dealing with the health. And now we're looking ahead, too, for Amari Cooper, and we're seeing potentially here, a game against Kansas City Chiefs where he is limited. He's going to be on the field, but maybe limited. Then he's got a bye in week 12. After that, he comes back. He plays San Francisco. But then some better matchups here. Theoretically, you get the Rams in here. The playoff schedule is Detroit. That's a tough one. And then New England and then the Jets. But on the other side, we have a running back. So Rico Dowdle might be more useful than people realize because the limitations of Cooper Rush are just that. And we've already heard a lot of people talk this week about, well, look, Rico's the number one guy. We're going to give the ball to Rico Dowdle. And I think they recognize you have to limit Cooper Rush as much as you possibly can in terms of overexposure. So I would rather have the running back here, especially with the way running backs get hurt. I can never have enough running backs. Amari Cooper is the better player, the better theoretical asset, but I think I want the guaranteed touches of the young running back in Rico Dowdle despite the deficiencies. And you did mention the schedule pretty good. There is some potential here for Rico Dowdle. So what side do you want to be on here, Cooper or Rico Dowdle?
I'm going to lean ecosystem over system. So I would lean Amari Cooper just based off on the fact I think the leaves are prettier in that regard, All right. With the time that we have left, I'm glad that we saved this one for last here. Chase Brown, George Pickens. Man, oh man. Joe, take it away.
Look, this is eye of the beholder. If you need running back, it's a good deal. If you need wide receiver, it's a good deal. This is a fair trade, in my opinion. Pickens has been terrific, and Chase Brown has RB1 potential rest of season now that his path is clear. So the fact that he's catching the ball in the backfield, that's also very positive too. So I love Pickens. I think in a vacuum, I'd rather have Pickens, but in terms of need, this one makes sense to me. When we return, a deep dive about a guy who could be the next NFL MVP.
Together, both Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the two big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, oh, man, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Totally, I missed you pinching your own cheek as I was looking down and did not know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma would do when you was here on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the game starts so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back into FST Fantasy Sports Today. Matt and Joe with you here, and everyone here believes the words we use manifest the things ahead of us. Let's take a deep dive in here because, Joe, you seem to have an inkling around the corner on a futures market, a particular player, a particular award in the plus money, so let's talk.
Yeah, I want to first take an L on something because going into the year, I was skeptical that Jalen Hurts could repeat his enormous rushing touchdown number from last year. I was wrong because he's going to smash it. He's going to smash it. It's going to be a new record at this point because, when you take away Jason Kelce from that brotherly shove, I wasn't sure if it still would work the same way. It would be so effective. It is. It's the same. It's all good. And the Eagles are all good because Jalen Hurts is playing very well. Also, Vic Fangio's got that defense finally clicking. Really rough start to the season for that defense. Again, a defense people forget is very young. Ton of Georgia guys on that defense too, but they're starting to really come together, and Jalen Hurts is really taking advantage of a division that now looks like theirs to lose. And I think that we have to pay attention to this because it's manifesting in the MVP race. We're going to talk about this more in hour two, but just as a stat here, I want to throw out what Jalen Hurts has been doing over the last couple of weeks. Jalen Hurts is the first quarterback in NFL history with a passing touchdown, a rushing touchdown, and a 100-plus passer rating in 4 straight games. That's how good Jalen Hurts has been over this stretch of games. Now, yes, some of these opponents sometimes have not been quite as good. Certainly Cincinnati, not the best one. Jacksonville, not the best one. Dallas in their current state, not the best situation. But Washington's been was a 7-2 team at the time. So now you've got ahead of you the Rams, the Ravens. Maybe that Ravens game becomes a really who is the real MVP situation here? Just looking at that. Carolina, then Pittsburgh again, but this time they get Pittsburgh at home. Excuse me, not again, just Pittsburgh at home, then Washington again, then Dallas and the New York Giants to finish out the year. So there's a lot of W's here. And if you look at what he's been doing, 12 passing touchdowns, 4 interceptions, but he also has 11 rushing touchdowns. That number has shrunk from 20-1 for Jalen Hurts MVP. After this last game is now 16-1. So wow. The 1,600 here, it's something to really think about and saying, okay, if we look at the board right now and where things are going, if Mahomes beats Josh Allen today, right, and Lamar takes a loss to the Pittsburgh Steelers, which is certainly possible, all of a sudden now Jalen Hurts looks a little different for that award. There's also an outcome where maybe Josh Allen beats Patrick Mahomes, and Patrick Mahomes statistically has not had the best statistic season this year. And then you still get that Lamar loss. Then they become like a big clump. So the MVP race is not finished at all, I think, by any stretch. I think these next 6 weeks are really going to determine it. You could see a lot of movement, and today is where it might begin, especially after a very convincing victory for the Philadelphia Eagles against a team that, not just the media has really fell in love with, but also the fan base of the Washington Commanders has really fallen in love with. And it's hard for them to love because it's been a lot of heartache and pain. But when I talk about these numbers and how good Jalen Hurts is playing right now, do you think that he has a legitimate shot to get in this conversation? Because just a couple years ago, he was right in the thick of it with Mahomes at the top of this board.
Yeah, look, you're making the great case for it, and that's the tip of the cap to you and the job that you do. And also, when you think about the cash out option as well, I mean, we're not that far out from these kind of things. But I'm with you in the scenarios that you laid out, and it begins to have the wagerers start to think about, do they get in right now? Do they wait for what happens and get in on Monday? Like, that's the thing. Something like this, you really have to have a true conviction, have it backed up with things like stats like Joe's presenting here. Otherwise, there are better places to put your money, right? We always talk about having that winning mindset and that winning edge. If you're apprehensive, if you just don't know, if you're biting your nails, and that's clearly not the confident place for your assets. So we have to think about that. But again, I always say this, if you are playing with their money, if this point in the season you're up and you're playing with someone else's capital, then by all means start to have fun with these numbers, because Joe said the next 6 weeks are going to tell that tale.
Yeah, look, it's still Lamar's to lose right now, in my opinion. Lamar's having a great season, 24 touchdowns, just 2 interceptions. But he also has just 2 rushing touchdowns. So I think when you look at it, you're saying to yourself, well, they're both playing with potentially the AP player of the year, right? With Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley. So that's where the argument gets a little tricky. That's why Mahomes is still hanging around. That's why Josh Allen's hanging around, because people look at them and say, well, they're getting it done with a little less around them necessarily. You don't have somebody playing as well as Henry or Saquon Barkley. Those 11 rushing touchdowns for Jalen Hurts, really interesting there too. He has done a really good job this year of getting this Eagles team back to where it needs to be. And if you look at the landscape right now, they might be the best contender to the Lions in the NFC. I don't know if it's the 49ers, even with McCaffrey back.
I agree.
I think it might be the Eagles. So hour 2 of FST right around the corner. The start sits, the waiver wire. We got it all for you. Don't go anywhere. Fantasy starts here.
Together, both Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the 2 big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, it's going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid, Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, oh, man, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Totally, I missed you pinching your own cheek as I was looking down and did not know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma would do to you when you was here on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the game starts, so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern